This is Alexis Parrish for ACTE 633, Module 2. For our first question, what makes you a unique learner? I have a few characteristics that make me unique as a learner. First, I know I'm a very visual person. I'm the learner that has a sort of photographic memory that knows on what page the diagram for, let's say, science was located and what the diagram looked like. I just took my oldest daughter to New York City for her birthday yesterday, and not having spent much time in the past decade in the city, I knew if I spent some time looking at a map with the streets and the landmarks, that would be invaluable, as I could navigate around thinking about the map in my head. I also know that the book makes mention of how the brain is more suited for processing visual information than anything else because the nerve cells devoted to visual processing account for 30% of the brain's cortex, compared to only 8% for touch and 3% for hearing. In terms of real-life applications of this, when I used to work in finance, we color-coded many real-time data and computer processes because we knew the brain could process the color quicker than text, so that's actually something that we did apply. I would also consider myself a kinesthetic learner. When I was a kid, I spent most of my time playing some sort of sport, either for fun or competitively. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to play soccer in college as well, and I liked being active. And I know I do learning better when I'm moving. I also know when I sat through 3-hour college lectures or currently in in-service days where we're seated for a lengthy amount of time, I have to plan points where I can just get up and get a drink of water, use the restroom just to get myself moving and refocused. When I go for runs, I'm also one of those weird people that doesn't like to listen to music and prefers just to run and create either to-do list or think and reflect on things while I'm moving. I would definitely classify myself in that 60% of learners that are either visual or visual kinesthetic, as this textbook states. I also think that I'm very sequential and linear, and I use checklists and to-do lists and everything. I need to come up with a list of tasks or things to study and start going through the list. Every module that I do for my grad classes, I make my own list of things I need to work on and then set personal due dates for myself for each task as I chip away at the work. I would also say I'm very curious by nature. I kind of want to learn as much as I can about the topic. Also, being an adult learner here, I'm always looking for how I can make things applicable and relevant in my personal life or job. I would also say I'm also very comfortable with technology, which is kind of what brings me here in the program, looking to apply that in my classroom. The second question, in what ways have others responded to your unique characteristics that have positively influenced your learning and then negatively influenced your learning? Looking at professionally, either working in finance or being a math teacher, many of my colleagues were like-minded. They are very logical, sequential, organized thinkers. So when we are presented with problems and are asked for suggestions on how to solve them, we frequently are on the same wavelength and can collaborate with one another with ease. Those that are very capable with technology can also work together with ways to utilize a tool or data optimally, and may have tested out something already and know the pros and cons of it. So being able to work and learn together in that professional environment has really been a positive influence. In terms of negatively, I know I personally struggled with my last class in my first master's degree, where it was action research. We're very fortunate enough to have the flexibility to come up with an idea and create a project with it. I, however, really struggled with the amount of freedom it gave me to just run with my idea, and I wasn't sure because there was no really major concrete requirements. I know working with others in my class, some of us struggled with that project, what it should really look like at the end of the day, because we weren't sure. We didn't have those concrete things, where others in the class really thrived in that environment and, kind of just went with the fluidity of the project as it developed. For the last question, as you review the excerpt and draw on what has helped you learn, thinking about your students from the digital generation, what do we need in order to succeed in the online environment? Well, looking at the blended learning teacher competency framework, I know the area I need to focus on is the domain of mindset. Under the mindset, there are 2 competencies listed there. Competency 1, the new vision for teaching and learning, and competency 2, the orientation towards change and improvement. This is the structure I would really like to work on in my classroom. I need to focus my lessons on in a way that that values all learners and supports students in the environment where they will be productive and successful in this 21st century. For me to think how I'd reflect would be more the way I've struggled learning, and how to address some of those difficulties. I had as a learner, rather than focusing on the ways that I learn best. I know many of the strategies I use in the classroom mirror the way that I learn. It helps that math is very linear, visual, and to solve and really think through problems, sometimes the best way is to really work it through yourself, which is usually kinesthetic. I've been trying to incorporate more technology in the classroom through the use of our one-to-one technology and our calculators. And I keep an organized classroom to help my students know what is expected, what they need to do. In my Google Classroom, I have postings of all the assignments and announcements, in addition to having a link to our classroom drive where I store all the notes and files and everything that we need. I also kind of try to develop that lifelong learning and that curious nature of them. In my own education, I feel like I wasn't given as much wiggle room to accomplish tasks or learn through exploration as I moved beyond the elementary school years. I know this is a critical piece of education that I must give my students to be able to thrive in the future job market. I have personally struggled with learning through failure, but as I even brought up in my post for Module 2, the emphasis on problem first, teaching second needs to be part of my teaching repertoire. This is part of the reason why I was drawn to TED's structured problem-solving process, because it gives that process of something at least to follow. Define the problem, design the solution, do the work, debrief on the effectiveness of the work that was done. This is much related to the real world. You're presented with a problem in life or work, and you just need to figure out a way to solve it. I try to implement this thought process through discovery activities before a formal lesson, but I know I'd really like to implement a larger scale and more relevant projects that, of course, utilize that collaboration. These skills directly relate to the shift in the job market and mirror the 6 fluencies discussed in Chapter 7. Structure in the classroom to integrate these categories speaks much to the mindset of the educator. And that's something that I would really like to have in my classroom to support that digital generation for what they really need to be successful. And this is the end of my Module 2 project. Thank you.